and close out our show. Wow. My name is Jennifer Perez, also known throughout the conference as Jenny from the block, and I am with the Miami chapter. I paid my dues on November 14, 2004, when I lost my oldest brother, Anthony Jason, to accidental carbon monoxide poisoning that leaked from the vehicle's exhaust as he sat in the car with a friend, talking, engine running, in an open parking lot. He was 25 at the time, and I was 15. I am so incredibly humbled to be standing here before all of you today. I never could have imagined, at the time of my loss, nor when I attended my first national conference, that I would come to a point in my journey where I could stand before a crowd as large as this to share my experience and everything I have learned as well as gained along the way. I know many of you will hear that and question what can possibly be gained from a loss this great. And a simple answer to that is control over my life again and an ongoing relationship with my brother. I am still a bereaved sibling and I still grieve, but I made a choice along the way to look at things differently now. 3 months after my brother passed away, my mom found the Compassionate Friends. We attended our first meeting as a family, although my mom was the only one who continued attending on a monthly basis. There was comfort in knowing that she found something to help her cope with the loss of her child. But the chapter did not have a siblings group, and I was unable to relate as it pertained to my own grief experience of losing a brother. Fast forward 7 years, in 2011, she decided she wanted to attend her first national conference. She hates when I tell this story, but I'm gonna tell it anyway. I personally love to travel, so for those parents out there who are wondering how they can convince their surviving children to come to a national conference, telling them that they get to travel or free vacation is your hook, bait, and sinker right there. So 2011 was the national conference in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and my mom, after having built enough courage, was planning to fly out there by herself since the rest of us weren't involved or really interested in participating in TCF. But of course, I crashed her party because, well, 1, I love to travel, and 2, because my mom can barely read a GPS and I was scared that she was gonna get lost on her way out of the airport. In her defense, she's gotten much better. I love you, Mom. What followed, however, wasn't just what it did for her, but all the things it did for me. I remember walking into the lobby of the hotel, and the other moms from our chapter just so happened to be at the lobby at the same time. So she was instantly greeted with all her Miami moms right behind her. But at that very same time, there was a group of siblings walking past the lobby, and they spotted me, stopped in their tracks, and said, "Hey you, this is your first conference, isn't it?" And I looked around, yeah. They said, "Come with us." So I looked at my mom, and she looked at her moms, and they said, "It's okay." So she let me go. We went to a hotel room, and we proceeded to hang out and laugh and share stories. Throughout the night, we continued to meet up with more and more siblings. Now I lost my place. Thanks, Keith, you rubbed off. We continued to meet up with more and more siblings throughout the night, and soon I became familiar with this whole new community that I never even knew existed. In that moment, I wasn't just someone who lost a brother. I became a TCF surviving sibling who had just gained hundreds of other brothers and sisters. This was the first time in my life that I had met people who didn't care where I came from, what my background was, what I did for a living. They just embraced new company out of a mutual understanding that we were all there for the same reason, and that was bonding enough. That national conference in Minneapolis brought into my life what I had been missing for so long, and that's hope. This is my 7th national conference. I haven't missed one since. To all the siblings that I met at my first conference and who have walked through the trenches with me over the last few years, this moment right here is just as much yours as it is mine. Words will never be enough to express how special you all are to me. You guys saved me, and I stand here to honor you. It had been 7 years of me facing this loss of my own. Let that serve as a testament that regardless of whether you are newly bereaved, 2 years, or 10 years into your journey, it is never too late to find hope again. I don't know where you are in your life right now. If you feel like you've been stuck and you can't move forward, if you've been in a dark place and you haven't found that light, where you are right now and all that has happened to you does not define you. This moment is not your forever. Love is forever. I am now 12, going on 13 years without my brother physically here with me. To say that this loss turned my family's life upside down would be an understatement that I'm sure all of you can relate to. But who I am today is not at all who I was in that first year. Who I was as of that first year was not at all who I had been for the last 15 years. It took me a long time to realize that I wasn't only grieving the loss of my brother, but I was grieving the loss of my parents and the loss of my self-identity. I had always seen my parents as the strength of the house, a force to be reckoned with. And one day I woke up to my dad screaming. As I walked out of my room that morning, 2 officers were in my living room after delivering news that literally brought my dad to his knees, put my mom in a state of shock, and left my brother silenced on the couch. I had walked over and asked, "What's going on?" And my brother Jeff responded, "Jen, Jay is dead." And so was my perception of life as I knew it. We became that family on TV. The rock that were my parents crumbled before me. To see them breaking down, expressing how they didn't know how to live, or just witnessing them struggle and losing themselves in their grief was enough to make me put mine away to be there for theirs. Outsiders who heard what happened would approach me and ask, "How are my parents?" Which would almost never be followed up with, "How are you?" And so I hardened, and I grew up quickly. Between what was going on with my parents and the response of the outside world, I was conditioned not to talk about my grief, because in my mind, not only did I have to be strong for my parents, it was clear that I needed to be strong for myself. Ultimately, I probably didn't handle my grief in the best ways I could have, and I went through a little bit of everything. I became angry, I questioned my faith, I lost old friends, I sought solitude because it was the only way that I could have a moment without it impacting my parents, or making my friends feel uncomfortable because they couldn't understand. I questioned life as I knew it. Who am I without him? When people ask how many siblings I have, am I now 2 or am I still 3? There's a saying that goes, when you lose a parent, you lose your past. When you lose a partner, you lose your present. And when you lose a child, you lose your future. But when you lose a sibling, you lose your past, present, and your future. From that first day without him, I was strapped in on this roller coaster of defining my new normal. I remember being in high school and sitting in class one day and being overcome by this sudden wave of emotions. I got up and I walked out of class, and of course my teacher walked up right behind me and was talking to me in the hall. And she said something to me that has stuck with me. She told me to look at grief like a glass of water. If all I do is keep adding water to the glass and never pause to pour some out, my glass, no matter how big, will eventually overflow. I was so busy keeping myself busy that I was denying my reality. I was hiding instead of confronting and surviving. As my chapter leader Cindy Baum would say, you can delay grief, but you cannot deny it. When Alan Peterson called me to let me know he wanted me to be the Sunday closing speaker, I was really racking my brain on what I was going to talk about. How could I, who have so much more to go, possibly deliver a message of hope to hundreds of other people? Let me tell you, the build-up is so much worse than the actual day. The same can be said about those key dates that daunt us in our grief. So often we put all our focus on where we are right now that we forget to pause and reflect on truly how far we have come in our journey. Something as simple as building enough courage to attend your first chapter meeting. Overcoming that fear of attending your first national conference. Or confronting your reality by speaking your loved one's name after having avoided it for so long. These are small steps that deserve recognition. And come the day after tomorrow, we will stand at a different viewpoint as we reflect yet again on where we were on this day. We are all walking this path, some of us at different speeds than others. I believe there is a strength that comes from our suffering, a clarity that makes its way through the struggle. There's no manual on all the things that have happened to us in our lives, and odds are none of us are going to get it right the first time. I sure didn't. But at some point along the way, I stopped crying at the sound of his favorite song and started singing along instead. I openly asked my cousins questions about him that I didn't get to know myself, just so I can continue to get to know him. My birthday was 1 week prior to his passing, and I had stopped celebrating. Now, I make it a point to do something I've never done, or go somewhere I've never been, so he can experience it with me, through me. I learned to forgive others for not always knowing the right thing to say, because once upon a time, I didn't know either. I learned to forgive myself for not always knowing the way, but choosing to survive and thrive anyway. And I openly communicate with my parents because I recognize how we both played a role in our disconnect and how much stronger we became when we started to help each other understand. I used to question what the purpose was behind living, and I came to the conclusion that perhaps I had it all wrong the whole time. That life has absolutely nothing to do with who grows the oldest, or moves the fastest, or makes the most. Maybe it's all about opening your heart and loving your hardest, feeling your deepest, and cherishing the memories that changed our lives forever. Yeah, I see it. Stop again. I am not at all the same person I used to be, but I wouldn't want to be that person anyway. Who I am today is filled with compassion, resilience, and a newfound passion for living. Now I carry his heart in mine, and everywhere I go, he goes, and everything I see, he sees. He is always with me, within me. You've heard me talk about my mom, but I'd like to take a quick moment to recognize my dad, who doesn't attend meetings, who can't talk about my brother or share stories, but after 12 years of standing silently still, faced his grief and attended his first national conference here in Orlando. I know this weekend was tough for you, maybe even overwhelming at times. But I am so proud of you for leaning into your grief and finally taking that step in your journey to speak his name out loud and share his stories. This weekend, you, along with the rest of us, didn't dwell on the shadow of his death, but instead basked in the rays of sunshine that came from his life. I love you, and we all walk with you.
Love you too.
We just spent a full weekend together, where many of us who came in with heavy hearts, feeling crazy in our emotions, or alone in our grief, have now found hope in a brighter day, have smiled in spite of the pain, and who have realized for the first time that they need not walk alone in the hands of compassionate friends. If there is anything I can leave you with that I have learned along the way, what the me now would tell the me then if I had the chance, is to give yourself permission to go through the motions. Be patient with others who are going through theirs. You're not crazy, you're human, and you're grieving. There are books you can read, and people you can talk to, but no one can go through this for you. So lean into it, and lean on us along the way if you need us. Know that you're doing the best you can with where you are and what you have right now. And you are not alone. There is strength that comes from our suffering. There is healing behind our tears. There is growth after sharing. And there is life in every time we speak their name. Love is forever. Thank you.